I'm with Harry Moser. He's president of the Reshoring Initiative. And Harry, I don't think anyone really has a better sense of the state of manufacturing in America right now than you do. Tell me, in general, what is the state of manufacturing in America today?
Wonderful. Wonderful compared to the last, say, 20 or 30 years. ISM index is at a record high. All the measures of production are excellent. So it's excellent for the last 20 or 30 years, but it's horrible compared to what it would have been if we hadn't lost 5 million jobs to offshore.
Now, what's the nature of this job loss? Because the popular press, of course, who are not experts the way we are, they cast as simply a matter of cheap wages. Everything's about wages at that point. Is that really what's going on here? Is it just about how much per hour?
We recently did a survey with Plant Moran, one of the largest accounting and consulting firms. And the survey concluded that about 70% of the decision to import products instead of making them here was due to price. And what drives price? Wages certainly drive price. Finally, wages, if you include all levels, direct, indirect, et cetera, it could be 50% or more. So wages is exceptionally important. Raw material prices can be lower. Government can subsidize. All kinds of other things can happen. Finally, wages are very important.
Now, it's in chasing the lowest cost input costs, of course, the lowest cost parts for manufacturers. There's a natural tendency, of course, to simply cherry pick the lowest price from any place around the world. But the result of that can sometimes be quite a complex and difficult to manage supply chain. What about the supply chain side of this?
We suggest measuring that. We have a free online software called the Total Cost of Ownership Estimator, which starts with that X works price and then adds into it duty, freight, packaging, carrying, cost of inventory, the opportunity cost when the product might stock out because you have a long lead time, all these other factors you're talking about. And the result is that if there's a 15 or 20% price difference, X works, probably you're more profitable buying it here because of all the factors that you were thinking of and that I mentioned.
So is that an inbuilt bias almost, the assumption automatically that the offshore source component is cheaper, so I go that way?
That's the automatic assumption. The company's running along doing okay. Some smart MBA comes in and says, let's source all of it in China, and he gets a big bonus or she gets a big bonus for doing that. And finally, the company has too much inventory, bad quality, warranty issues, can't deliver, all these kinds of issues, and no more profitable than they would have been if they continued to source in the US. Now, it's up to the US supplier to innovate, to redesign, to improve the process, to automate, to do all those things, so as to get the US price, so it's as competitive as possible.
Now you mentioned automation. Automation is not only advancing rapidly, the cost of automation is dropping rapidly the same way. Is at a point now where basically for simple pick and place operation, $35,000 or $40,000, you can buy a robot and just drop it into your process on the end of the line. Is that going to be the solution? Is automation the magic bullet to the low wage competition?
Yeah, I'd say a combination of two things. One would be DFMA, design for manufacturing and assembly, and so as to design the part to get as much of the labor out of the manufacture and the assembly as possible, and then to automate as much as possible to get as much of the remaining labor out. And then people ask, well, if we do all that, why would we want the work to come back? Because there aren't going to be any jobs to go with it. And our answer to that is that if we do not automate, our cost gap relative to China and other countries will rise further, and we'll lose more jobs to Chinese automation as they automate than will you lose to US automation if we do automate. So it's a world competition. You have to fight, you have to get in there, you have to automate.
Now some global competitors, they essentially demand technology transfer as part of the agreement to manufacture in their place. And also we hear a lot about cybersecurity and the risks of IP theft or illegal distribution of IP. How big is that? How important is that we maintain American control of the intellectual property component of this?
Yeah, I'd say extremely important. But we certainly don't have the lowest cost manufacturing, and what we have had over the last 20, 30 years is the best intellectual property. And so if we give that away, if we let that get taken, we've lost our best advantage. So when you look at the reasons that companies have chosen to reshore, have chosen to bring the manufacturing back to the US, the risk of IP is maybe the 7th or 8th most important factor.
Should it be higher?
Probably not. I mean, the highest issues have been things like rising wages offshore, freight costs, long deliveries, quality differentials, things that are hitting you every day on every part, as opposed to IP, which is a occasional or sometime risk rather than a continuous factor.
Labor shortages are reported everywhere in American manufacturing right now. It's just hard to find people, period. A factor?
Yes, but there are labor shortages everywhere in the world. I used to be on the board of ISTMA, International Special Tooling and Machining Association, and maybe 10 years ago we had a meeting and they had representatives in from groups like the NTMA from all over the world, and every country said, we don't have enough tool makers, we don't have enough machinists, the kids all want to go to university and study art and music, the government gives us no respect, they all said they had a problem. Now we have the biggest problem because we started to send all the kids to university before they did, and manufacturing doesn't have the image that we want, and our wage costs are higher. So we've got the biggest problem in it, but it's a problem everywhere in the world, and for whatever we choose to do, automation, design, productivity, anything you want to do, you need that skilled workforce. So it's an absolute must.
Harry, what can the Reshoring Initiative do to address this problem?
Yeah. We can help companies. Companies that are trying to make a decision on where to source a product or where to produce it can use our total cost of ownership estimator, which starts with the ex-works price, adds in duty, freight, packaging, all these other factors to come up with the total cost. And that'll often close a 15 or 20% price gap. And we figure that about 25% of what's offshore would come back if companies just did the math properly. That's what the purchasing department can do. Now the sales department, when they're competing with imports, we're making widgets, we're competing with somebody from China, India that makes widgets, sells them for 20% less. That sales department should use the total cost of ownership estimator to show the customer that the customer's cost will be lowest if it decides to source here domestically from us. So I helped one Illinois-based company use that tool, and they say that was key to saving a $60 million order, just by getting the customer to see the math correctly. So we encourage companies that would like to make better sourcing decisions or make more successful sales against imports to use our total cost of ownership estimator, available at the Reshoring Initiative website, www.reshorenow.org.